Hey guys, welcome to Pistons Talk Podcast. I'm so glad that it lagged before.
Oh, me too. That was actually really good.
So glad. I'm joined once again by Sean Murphy. You guys probably see him on here at least once a month from half court. Sean, how you doing, man?
Anthony, brother, what's going on, man? Thanks so much for having me. It's I can't believe it's already been a month since the season's been done. It's kind of been like simultaneously like kind of refreshing to not have to worry day to day about what's going on. But I'm not sure about you, but a part of me just feels really empty because a thing that was a massive part of my routine is just suddenly not happening. And especially now that we're in the finals and like we have 3 days between a game, I'm already jonesing for some hoops, man. I can't lie.
Yeah, I was confused. I thought game 2 was yesterday. I was like,
oh no, game 2's tonight.
I know. I looked at the calendar. I'm like, wait, I thought game 2 was
because in the conference finals they went to every other day, and then for the finals they went back to every 3 days. Which and then later in the week, that's what's weird about it. I mean, granted, some of it's like they allow travel days and all that stuff, but they leave us wanting more. And maybe that's a good thing on their end, but damn it if I don't want some more hoops.
Especially with just the way that game ended. Like,
yeah,
I watched the first half, and my buddy, I said, I'm gonna go downstairs. So this game's over. Like, Thunder were up 20, and then I come back, and he's like, man, you missed the comeback. He's like, Obi Toppin couldn't miss from 3, turned into Steph Curry, and then the last 3 minutes, I'm like glued to my TV. I'm like, wow.
Yep.
Pacers keep doing it.
Yeah, I mean, Tyrese Halliburton is on quite literally like the greatest clutch shooting run we've perhaps ever seen, like in the history of the sport. Like just the heater that this guy's on, and the fact that they just continually come back from down double digits. It takes like a special resolve as a group, but then you throw in the fact that you have Rick Carlisle as a coach, which Pistons fans know pretty well, is a guy that can coach like the best of them. So yeah, I think the disrespect or the lack of credit being given the Pacers' way, I think game 1 is at least just an eye opener of, no, this is a series. Like, the Thunder are going to win it. They're going to have to go earn it, because the Pacers, like, you can't just put away like any other team with like a 10-point lead going into the fourth quarter. Like, they're not going anywhere.
Yeah, I mean, when I saw the spread when it came out, it was like negative 700 or 800, I want to say. I was like, no shot.
Yeah.
Pacers are not going to lay down. Just the way that the playoff run that they've had, I've seen people just say like Tyrese Halliburton devil magic or magnet ball. It's honestly so entertaining. And I don't know about you, but I've really enjoyed the NBA playoffs. I know a lot of people say it's boring. Like, I like that. I don't know it's going to be Steph and LeBron every year. Like,
what's been boring about this post? That's what I don't get. Like, I think people are just like truly showing their colors of not actually being a basketball fan and being a fan of just like all these, just different characters that are put out there. Like, don't get me wrong, I get liking watching LeBron in the finals, and there was something to be said about watching those Mount Rushmore all-time greats, but those guys didn't become greats until they got their first times too, and like at a certain point, we like the cycle has to start back around. And these are two young, exciting teams that, like, yeah, the ratings might have been like, I think I saw it was like the worst since like 2008 or something like that. First of all, if you don't talk about it at all on any of these major sports networks leading up to it, it's almost like people can forget it's even happening. It's like, oh, great, there's a finals game. Like, how does that affect who the Knicks are going to hire as coach? I feel like that's the segment on ESPN,
It really is, man. It's honestly kind of crazy though. I was watching like First Take, and then they were like discussing like LeBron's best teammates. I'm like, brother, what are we doing?
It's like, I swear at the end of this finals, the first question is going to be, how does this affect LeBron's legacy?
Can Luka overtake LeBron's throne? I can already hear it.
What will it take for the Lakers and Knicks to beat next year?
We got our guy Leggy Sports in the chat. The boys, let's get it.
I want to knock Leggy, but do want to shout him out and congratulate him. Welcomed a brand new child into the world this weekend. So, Leggy, congratulations.
I'd assume because I didn't see a 313 Connect episode, so I assumed. I know he told us that baby was coming soon, so congratulations, Leggy. I want to get into this ringer list because this time last year we had one Piston in it. This year we have two. So they come out with their top 100 list, and they do a really good job because they update it throughout the season, and this is kind of a playoff one. So we have Cade Cunningham, who cracked the top 25, and Jalen Duren that cracked the top 100. I don't know if you got the chance to read the full thing over, but are you kind of surprised that the Pistons have two players in the top 100 from them?
I'm not. I might be surprised at which players are in there. Like Cade Cunningham, that's not a shocker at all. I think the question with Cade isn't going to be if he's on a top 100 list. The question is going to be when is he in the top 10? I think that's the real question for someone like Cade. For me, this isn't like a slight at a Jalen Duren, but I thought like if you're looking at like our most impactful Pistons in the play, if this is based on postseason, I would maybe throw Sar in there. But I mean, if you look at Duren's improvements throughout the season and just throughout his career, like he did have an impact, especially towards down the stretch. And overall, like his postseason too, like he got better as the playoffs went as well. So when he's truly at his best, like he is one of the most impactful players on the court any given night. So for me, I'm not too shocked that the Pistons have two guys that are in the top 100. And if they want to continue to head down this path of contention, they're going to need to have three or four guys at least in the top 100. So, I think this is just a testament to the development that they've had and the level of play that they played at. Like I just, especially you just look at how good Cade was for his first playoff series. I may be more surprised he's as low as he is, but again, I just the ceiling is only up for these guys.
Yeah. When I looked at the top 100, I'll just put it on the screen. I made a graphic of the top 25 for people that haven't seen it. Cade's at 16. 15 was Kawhi, KD, 14, Anthony Davis, 13, LeBron, 12, which I was kind of surprised they had him out of the top 10. Victor Wembanyama. It doesn't look like that anymore. He's actually bald and he's a monk. If you guys haven't seen that, I was scrolling the timeline. I was like, who is that? But,
I was so hoping you saw that. So I'm really glad you said that.
Yeah, I saw it before I left my phone inside and went out and just enjoyed the nice weather today. But yeah, Cade at 16, I think he was in the 40s or I believe 50s last season. So that's a pretty big jump. I could argue he should be at Kawhi's spot, but I guess they just put Kawhi in the top 15 just to be respectful of a two-time champion. But I mean, see a lot of these younger new faces of the league in the top 10 though.
Yeah, I can't really wrap my head around why Kawhi would be above Cade, especially, just with Cade's durability and everything he brings. I guess you could say Kawhi's a better defensive player, maybe, but yeah, I think, at that point it's just kind of pulling hairs. Kevin Durant, that's even an interesting one too. Of course, when he's healthy and he's out there, he's looking as good as anybody, but he's about to be on his third different team in in 4 years.
Yeah.
So, it's an interesting dichotomy there for sure.
Yeah, it really is. No, I didn't make a graphic down for the top 100, but I will say Jalen Duren was 97th.
Yep.
Now, number 98 was kind of, I chuckled to see who was number 98. It was Jalen Green. And I know there's still a Jalen Green hype to this day. Jalen Green barely made the top 100 list from the Ringer, but everyone else in Cade's draft class was, I thought, properly rated and ranked. So Jalen Duren's better than Jalen Green. You heard it here first.
Yeah, you're right from the Ringer. You can see it right there. Man, they have Jalen Green right down there with Jordan Poole and Bradley Beal. That is rough. But I think with Duren, it's like it's interesting to see kind of just where they have him at and just kind of what the overall, like, to me, Duren's just kind of one of those polarizing prospects in a sense, because I think I think everyone sees the athleticism and everyone sees the, the intangibles of like, oh, this guy has like low-key really good vision. This guy is really athletic. Like when he is at his best and when he is fully mentally engaged, he can be a really dominant presence. But I think in order for Duren to get higher on these lists, to me, and I'm not sure, like what your thoughts are, but to me, it's just he just needs to get more consistent all around, just like the approach needs to be more consistent each night. And the mental lapses just have to be on a minimum on the defensive end, as far as just, some of the cuts that are allowed, just some of the missed opportunities, fouls that are being drawn. It's one of those things where it's like, okay, yeah, you're 21, so you kind of understand like why those things are happening now. But if you want to have a big long-term contract, and if you want to have a space in this league for a long time, because he's probably looking to make like 25-30 million a year. If I'm his agent, I'm wagering that's what he's asking for. If you want to make that type of money, you just can't have that like consistently, especially if the Pistons want to win and to get where they want to get to in this, kind of in this window. Because I think as the Pacers are in the finals right now, I think you have a lot of teams, that are young throughout the East that are looking at themselves and going, why can't we be that if we go out and make the right moves? And for the Pistons, one of the things that will inherently limit their ceiling is if Jalen Duren doesn't take those steps. So he's just, to me, he's just one of those, like that's, I find it really interesting that the Pistons are talking so much about looking at the big market and what they could do there and what that means for Jalen Duren and all of those things. So I'm not sure your thoughts are, but yeah, it's like, that's just one of the things I am just watching like a hawk this offseason.
I think the Jalen Duren conversation is always a fun one for me because I see both sides of the fence. There's the side of the fence that just doesn't think he's good. I've talked to people on their podcast where they just don't like Jalen Duren, and that's fine. There's other people on the fence that 21, let him grow. 3 coaches, 3 years. Talked last week with my guy Motor City Hoops, and we're
Bryce
kind of
Simon, the GOAT.
Yeah, Bryce Simon, love him. He was kind of talking about how like Jaden Ivy got benched under Monty, but Jalen Duren didn't, and he said that was more damaging, he thought, than Jaden Ivy getting benched because Jalen Duren was allowed to develop bad habits under Monty. And I think you saw a lot of that the first 25 games of the season where the consistency wasn't there on a night-to-night basis. Even Trajan mentioned it. He's like, yeah, the last like 40, 50 games, he stepped up his game. He even admitted that, I was kind of playing soft, wasn't playing up to my standard, which I think him working with JB, working with the assistant coaches, the big man coaches, I still think there's something there. Yeah. Now, is it going to be a multiple-time Defensive Player of the Year All-Star? I don't know. If he developed a jump shot, I think it would really open up his game. A good 12 to 15-foot jump shot, I think would really open his game. But I don't really know how the Pistons feel about him long-term. And I think you're right on the nose with the money. Like 25, 30 million a year is probably what he's going to get. With the cap going up every year, I mean, who's to say he can't get the same money that Nick Claxton got? Who's to say he can't get $100 million? Like, I think he could. The more I think about it, the more I see these reports. We'll talk about those in a little bit. I think the Pistons may look to just say, hey, we want to see if you can do it for one more year, and then we can have those conversations of maybe a possible extension because they're linked to a lot of guys that space the floor.
Yeah.
And Duren hasn't known to space the floor yet. Not saying he can't. He just hasn't shown the ability to knock down a three-point shot or a good 15 to 20-foot shot. So it's going to be really interesting, Sean.
Yeah.
You read all these articles, all these reports, and it's like, what's going on with the Pistons?
Yeah, because if they're looking to do the two big lineup, which like listen, that is a real possibility as at least to have as a wrinkle, right? Like to be able to have one big who could stretch the floor, someone who can kind of be more of that paint presence. I almost do wonder though, and this is just something I'm keeping in the back of my mind. Do you remember a team that was reportedly interested in Jalen Duren at the trade deadline?
Mm-hmm.
The Los Angeles Lakers, and they're going to still need to go out and get a center this summer. And so if the Pistons do indeed go after a Naz Reed or a Miles Turner, or Santi Aldama, to a lesser extent, Santi Aldama, it wouldn't necessarily shock me if the Pistons got an offer from the Lakers that they liked, if they turned around and potentially, did some form of business. I'm not saying I want that to happen, or I'm not saying like I'm not reporting anything. I'm just going off of the tea leaves that we've already seen. And he kind of fits the mold of the type of big they're looking to have around Luka. Now, the thing is again, if you're the Pistons, like whatever move, like if you are going to move off of that type of player, you have to make sure without a doubt that what you're getting is an upgrade and someone that you can have around this core long term. But this is about the time, I think, where we're going to see some of these, clarifying decisions being made, because especially before, like with Troy Weaver, there's a little bit more patience because he's the one that went out and picked the groceries. But the only player that Trajan Langdon has drafted on this team that's a lottery pick is Ron Holland. Everyone else, those aren't his guys. So that means that they're not necessarily safe outside of a Cade Cunningham and probably a Sar Thompson.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting, man, because I've been telling people that listen to this podcast for the last year and a half. I said, you guys, there's going to be a big move. I know it's going to happen. It's on the horizon. It's going to happen. You can't keep every single one of these players, right? Because it gets expensive contractually. It's going to happen.
Well, and especially too, like all these teams that are, that are in these tax aprons that are going to be looking to make changes. But on top of that, like I truly think the second Jason Tatum's Achilles was torn, the entire landscape of the league changed from that night forward. Because as unfortunate as it is, you have to look at that window as an opportunity if you are a young team. Like, no disrespect whatsoever to the Indiana Pacers, but I think you rightfully, if you're Cleveland, if you're or even if you're like Orlando, like if they get things right, like if you go out and you make the right move, if you go get your Pascal Siakam type player, what's to say you can't be in that same situation, at least even like pushing towards like the second or third round? If you're the Pistons, if Cade takes the jump that we all expect, if guys on the Pistons, take jumps that kind of we all expect, and then they go out and get the right player, I'm not saying the Pistons are going to be a finals team, but is it crazy to say that they could be a semifinalist in the East next year?
Man, I thought they had a real shot this year.
Yeah.
I mean, you get a foul call. You have to, Tim Hardaway hits those free throws. You go back to New York, where outside of, game one, you battled them each and every game and gave them fits. Who's to say you couldn't advance to the second round? And then, Trajan had mentioned it earlier this year. Like, he didn't really see this team as a playoff team, but I think you just have to tip your cap to JB and the way he got them believing and how they can beat anyone on a night-to-night basis. And I'm glad you brought up like Orlando and the Phillies and all those other teams, not Toronto, by the way, because the Pistons have a prime opportunity.
Not Toronto.
Glad you got that. The Pistons have a prime opportunity to keep pace with the East. You don't want them not doing anything, and then you have teams leapfrogging you in the Eastern Conference. You want to kind of keep pace. So whether that's upgrading to a Naz Reed, whether that's a Santi Aldama, there was reports earlier, we'll talk about a little bit later, about a Caris LeVert. And even the guys that they're bringing in for pre-draft workout, Sean, all these guys are old. There's not one and done guy that they have worked out. They're all 22, 23-year-old seniors. So I think that tells you a lot of their approach. Is they're looking for contributors. They're looking to get better. They don't want to just kind of sit there and not do a damn thing. They want to continue to get better and compete in the Eastern Conference.
Yeah, the time to take flyers is over when you have a guy that's going to be in all NBA conversations for years to come, like a Cade Cunningham. And I know a lot of people, like when Cade made All NBA. I know there was some trepidation at first because that meant that he was going from taking 25% of the salary to 30% of the salary. But when you have that level of clarity of knowing that you have a guy that can be an MVP candidate, you pay that price every single day of the week and twice on Sundays. And when you're a franchise, like when you're a general manager or a president and you have that type of player, it is your responsibility to begin fielding a competitive team around that player and maximizing whatever that window or that potential can be. So I think between how competitive they were in this run, how special, certain players showed themselves to be, but then on top of that, just how completely different this landscape of the league could be in the next couple of months. I think it changes a lot of things. And even though, like, I'm not sure if you saw the reports, I think this is also from Jake Fisher that the Giannis talks have died down for now, as far as the, like some of the trade stuff. But even if Giannis is still on the Bucks, Dame is injured too. That's another team that is not necessarily going to be in that mix or in that consideration this year. And so that's still another team that you can clear and move ahead of. So even if Giannis doesn't move right now, which personally I don't buy, I think he's probably still going to get moved. Like, there is still going to be some significant movement that happens. And, unless some like mega star comes to the East outside of Detroit, I just don't see like a clear, like perennial, like favorite to be the team at the top of the East next year. Not even Cleveland, with kind of how things ended there.
Yeah. I mean, they're shopping Darius Garland. And they want to build around Evan Mobley and Donovan Mitchell. So there's a lot of,
interesting. It wasn't the coach's fault this year.
No, yeah, you can't blame JB. Glad he's here.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. I could see why the Pistons might want to be aggressive this offseason. I could understand it. I could see it. Even though they've said, we've preached patience, but that was over a month ago. A lot of things have changed.
Yeah.
You get reports every day of like what teams want to do. So it'll be interesting to really see like what does happen this summer, because I know we're 2 weeks away from the draft, and then it's free agency, then it's summer league, and then it's completely dead season after that. So
yeah. And I still think like we're going to largely see like a lot of continuity. I still think we're going to see a lot of the same core still intact, but I do think you can still like bring in a Naz Reed or, someone like that and carry in continuity. Like, I don't think you have to make terribly drastic of changes. So I think I think it'll be somewhere kind of in the middle of making a big move and keeping continuity.
Yeah, same here. I did want to talk for a couple of minutes. So there's been a lot of international stuff going on with Team Jamaica. I'm sure you've kind of kept up with it. So Asar Thompson and Isaiah Stewart will be representing the Pistons for Team Jamaica. I'm looking at this roster, Sean. I don't think anyone's going to score 100 points. Like, because they have some defensive dogs on that team.
Yeah. Yeah. Both of the Thompson twins, Isaiah Stewart, and like there's some absolute studs. Scotty Barnes is also like looking to be on that team. So if that does in fact go down the way that we think it will, that's going to be like one of the most fun Olympic rosters to watch in a while. Not saying that they're going to medal, or like, I don't even know how competitive they will be, but one thing's for sure is they're going to muddy the waters. And I think the Thompson twins are two guys that can really thrive in FIBA rules. I think Isaiah Stewart thrives in that setting as well. So one thing's for sure, whenever Jamaica's playing, I will be watching.
Yeah, I'm curious to see what happens with the Team USA rosters, because you've had, Cade and Jalen Duren be in the select scrimmages. Like, is this the year Cade makes the team? And hopefully Steve Kerr's not coaching it.
I'm fairly confident that because is this year because we just had the Olympics pretty recent, like that was last summer.
Yeah.
Like the next summer is probably going to be the World Cup. So I imagine Cade will be on that roster. Like, I have a hard time. Like, if he's healthy, if he stays playing the level that he has, he was offered to be on the roster of the last World Cup.
Yeah.
So I have a hard time envisioning him not being there. If we get Cade versus the Thompson twins and Stu in the World Cup, that would be so fun.
Yeah.
And those guys, there would be no love lost in that game. Like, they would go at it.
He really would. I went down the rabbit hole because Simone is going to be competing for Team Italy in a FIBA tournament. And then one of his teammates is actually a former Pistons draft pick. You think you could name who that former Pistons draft pick is?
So I know who it is. I know what player you're talking about. The name is completely slipping me. I know we drafted him in the second round a number of years ago, and he just never even came over to begin with. Wasn't he drafted by Stan Van Gundy?
He was drafted by Troy Weaver.
What was that? Was that one of Troy's first years?
Gabriel Procida.
That's right. It was Procida. That's right.
So he's going to be competing with Simone over on Team Italy. He's on the national team over there anyway. So it'll be. I'm going to keep an eye on Simone too, just to kind of see if the shot's back. Because this season, man, it was so inconsistent for him. I'll be curious to see how he does look playing on Team Italy. But the Thompson twins and Stu and Norman Powell and Scotty Barnes, like Team Jamaica is going to be tough to score. And I'm just saying that first and foremost.
Well, and honestly, I love the fact that we're getting more guys who want to compete in Olympic basketball, even if it's not for Team USA. Like, I love the fact that we're going to see, like a levity of like a wide variety of competition and guys like willing to go out there and just for the sake of competition too. And the story of how like Amen and Asar, like they both grew up watching Usain Bolt and dreamed about representing Jamaica in the Olympics, on the basketball side. Like, I imagine that those guys they have a very real chance of stealing the show in the Olympics with some of the things that they can do athletically. So I don't know how they would fare, but one thing is for certain is I think they would cause a real dent, and they could legitimately take a team out of medal contention if they show up on the wrong night, not feeling all right against that Jamaican team, because they'll show up ready to go.
Isn't it funny? Players play harder in the Olympics than they do in the All-Star game.
Yeah, I mean, for some guys though, they even even Luka has said that he would view like a gold medal as a bigger accomplishment than a title. It's one of those things where like there's a real pride to it, especially for a lot of guys who come from from European countries or from smaller nations. Like, that is a very real thing. So I don't even think there's anything that could get players to care about the All-Star game anymore. That is a whole other conversation. I don't even know if we'll have an All-Star game in the next 5 years.
Yeah, I mean, it's Adam Silver is just completely out of touch with like what the players actually want to do. Like, I saw him on ESPN talking about it, and like he doesn't even know. He's like, yeah, I know. He's like, we're gonna do like USA versus the world. I was like, yeah, that'll be a blowout. Like, who's gonna be on the world?
It's really like he is just scrambling for getting these guys to care. And to me, like, I don't really know why it's as much of a struggle as it is. Like, I get that players want the rest, but like, if you're going to be making as much money off of these events as these guys are, off of sponsorships and all these different things, like, we're not asking for a lot, man. Just give us 10 minutes of good hoops. Just 10.
I felt so bad for Cade, man. He got hosed because they did like a little stupid tournament thing this year. I was like,
yeah,
oh, that was it. Like, what the hell just happened? It was like 2 seconds of Cade. I was like, bro, like, imagine making your first All-Star game and you play 2 minutes.
If that, yeah, you go and you do all this because like people don't realize, like, for players, like that is the one thing that I do think if the league does want like these guys to try, there has to be some form of middle ground, because don't get me wrong, they do a lot of great charity work and like community stuff when they go out there, but like players, like they don't get a second to breathe. Like they're at all these different like corporate partnership events. They're at all these different, sponsorship deals, like community stuff, interviews. Like there's a lot of stuff going on in All-Star Weekend. I think we kind of have to cut the crap down to get guys to just focus on the basketball. That's my opinion. Whether or not that will happen, it won't. But it's it's definitely something that is it's a multifaceted problem. It's all crappy.
It really is. It really is. Hopefully they just go back to East versus West, because if it wasn't broke. It didn't need to fix it. And I know we talked about these guys at the top of the podcast, but you brought to my attention before we went live that Jake Fisher had a report on his Substack that Naz Reed, Miles Turner, and Santi Aldama are on the Detroit Pistons radar. I talked about Naz Reed and Miles Turner last week because that came from Mark Stein. Santi Aldama is actually a brand new name to this list. Let's talk about Santi first, and then we can kind of circle back to Naz and Miles. I know he's a younger guy. Memphis probably had his best season with the Grizzlies. When you look at a guy like a Santi, one, do you think it would be an ideal fit for the Pistons? And two, what do you think possibly a contract like that could be? Because he is a RFA, so the Grizzlies could match any offer.
Yeah, I certainly think it makes a lot of sense to have a Santi Aldama type player on their radar, especially if they aren't able to go out and get like a Naz Reed or a Miles Turner. He's someone that, when you talk about the ability to have someone who's big, who can stretch the floor, who can play defense, who does all the little things that you want a player to do, he certainly fits that mold and makes a lot of sense. When you're a player that's that young and has shown that type of improvement and has that skill set, it's very easy for him to start approaching like the 15, 20, plus $1 million a year mark. So the thing that's going to be difficult is if the Pistons are going to want to make that type of move for Santi Aldama, they're either going to have to like do some form of sign and trade to get the Grizzlies to buy into making that move, or they're going to have to offer a high amount that makes Memphis trepidatious to match said offer. So that's where it gets tricky to me. I personally, like, if you're able to bring him in at like 15 or 17 a year and you make some form of sign and trade where you send like some cap relief or something in return, I think that's something that would make a lot of sense. It's just once you start getting up, kind of like up to those numbers, you just want to make sure that what you're getting is a proven commodity. And he's probably the biggest flyer of the three between Turner, Reed, and Aldama. But I mean, I certainly get why he's on this list, because he definitely fits the mold of what the Pistons need to kind of take that next step, so to speak. So yeah, definitely interesting to see his name floated in there. And Jake Fisher, if it's coming from the Steinline Substack, it's probably true.
Yeah, I saw the report last week and I talked on it briefly, which I don't know if you remember when we did the Pistons roundtable, and I mentioned Miles Turner like really, really early on, and I was like, Miles Turner would be like ideal for the Pistons.
Yep.
I didn't see the Pacers making the finals. I thought, because they were struggling at that time, I don't even think they weren't even a play-in team, if I remember correctly. They were like maybe an 11 seed. They were really struggling. I was like,
they were under 500 at Christmas.
Yeah, which is wild to even
think about. Yeah. Since January 1st, they have the second best record in the league, only to the Thunder.
That's insane. It's truly insane where they can just kind of coast and just turn on a switch.
Well, because it was really health that was kind of their issue, to start, and just Hallie just had this weird shooting slump coming out. So like it's their season's almost like it's almost kind of like how they are in games where they just turn, like they flip a switch in the second half and become this completely different team. That's kind of what they did in the entirety of the season, if you think about it.
Yeah, it's wild to think about, because I remember mentioning Miles, but I will say, out of the three names, I think he's probably the one that's the most unrealistic.
Yeah.
Just because, like, if you truly want to make room for Miles, you're either trading Tobias or you're trading Stu. You're not touching Cade because Cade's the franchise guy, but just to make the money work, those are the two contracts that you would have to try to lure, maybe some draft capital now that you can trade first round picks. But I think Miles, to me, depending on how the finals go, Sean, I think he could get 30 million a year. I really do.
Yeah. And honestly, it's like, if I'm Indiana, I'm not letting that guy walk this summer based on how things are going. Like, especially if the Pacers go out and win the title, which we can no longer rule out as a possibility, being up 1-0 on that crazy comeback win. Like, they didn't even play well and they still came out and won. And Miles Turner's he's someone that's been on the Pistons. I feel like he's like been one of those guys that's been on the Pistons radar for like a long time. And it makes a lot of sense because he is a good player. But I just it would take a lot, in my opinion, for the Pistons to be in a position to be able to bring in a mile, like a Miles Turner. I could see them driving up the price and being someone that, like, Turner can kind of almost use as like leverage in a way with the Pacers. But to me, the Naz Reed ones, that is the one that's more realistic to me. You're still like, you're probably not that far off from the 30 million if you go and get a Naz Reed. You're like, if you saw those alleged leaked Instagram DMs where he was talking crap with a fan, he said he's going to go out and get 100+ million this offseason, which I don't think is out of the question for Naz Reed. That was probably the most sane thing he said in that entire exchange. But so you'd probably still have to do some things to make the money work there as well. The difference is that the Pacers are actually in a really good position to bring back Miles Turner, because all it takes is going into the luxury tax. And if you're Minnesota, you have a off season of hell when you talk about the decisions that they're going to have to make, and like how they're going to have to keep, like how they're going to be able to keep things together. If they keep Naz Reed, which like I know they want to, they're not going to have a team that's going to be able to sniff getting back to the conference finals. So, and quite frankly, I just don't know if they're going to be in a position to be able to pay him that much. I mean, they just had the sale of the franchise go through too. So I think we'll learn a whole lot about like what they can actually do financially this offseason. And I don't think the answer is keeping the whole band together in Minnesota.
Yeah, I even saw a report that he wants to opt out of his player option and kind of just test the waters to see, what he could get. And I've had you on several times. I've told you, like, I feel like he'd be a fit in San Antonio. He fits anywhere personally. I think in Detroit, though, he fits like a glove, just for the fact that I know JB could really utilize him to his best of his abilities. I think we've done podcasts. You do your own podcast. Like, Pistons fans always mention getting a power forward that can shoot and, protect the rim a little bit.
Yeah.
Naz can score the basketball at all three levels. He's a really good basketball player. I think a price point for him is probably 100 million, 25 a year.
Yep.
I think he could get it. I do think he's probably the one player where I look at it, he's pretty realistic, and the Pistons can get there. They would have to move some players, in my opinion, to possibly get him. And my only pushback with him and with some fans I've been going back and forth with is he's been a bench player his whole career in Minnesota. Does he get paid and want to start? Does Tobias Harris want to take a reserve role if he's still on the roster? Let's just hypothetically, you still have Tobias and Naz on your roster. Ideally, I'd love to have a Tobias off the bench, but maybe Naz doesn't want to come off the bench. Maybe Tobias doesn't want to come off the bench. I think those are the conversations that maybe people aren't having right now. But I'd be lying to you, Sean, if I said I wouldn't like a Naz Reed on the Pistons.
I think that's one of those situations where you're like, even if that's in the air, you take Naz Reed and you figure the rest out later. I will say, if there's any person on the team or in the league that would handle that situation like with professionalism and grace, I do think it is a Tobias Harris. I do think when you just kind of look at his, just his overall demeanor and just, like how he's been embraced in Detroit and kind of the role that he has, on this team. Like we even saw this year, like you don't even have to look at another team. Like look at the Pistons. Like Malik Beasley was their sixth man, but he wasn't their sixth most important man. Like he was one of the most, important players to what they were doing each and every night. So even if they brought out like Naz Reed off the bench, at least to start, or even Tobias Harris, kind of in like a sixth man role, I could almost see Tobias even kind of being like an Al Horford type guy, going forward, where it's like he's just a guy where you bring him in for whatever minutes you need, and he's able to just fill that role kind of each and every night, like no longer like as like a focal point, but as someone who's like one of like your premier role players. And to me, like if Naz is just one of those guys where if you have the opportunity to bring him in, you take that opportunity, because there's not many guys where I feel like it is a surefire like guarantee that he makes your team better. Naz Reed's one of those surefire guys to me when you look at like both sides of the ball. And I know people are like, oh, well, there was the tussle in Minnesota. Believe me, man, if those guys got in the gym and were teammates, I think Naz Reed and Ron Holland would probably get along famously.
They'd probably become best friends. Honestly.
Yeah. They'd probably have a weird respect for each other based on the fact that they got in a tussle. Like it's bizarre how that stuff works in sports. So if he's on the table, if there's mutual interest, I think you gotta look into making that happen.
Yeah, Kyle Metz actually left a comment saying, "I think Tobias is willing to come off the bench if there's a clear upgrade at power forward. He could be. He honestly could be. You never know. Tobias has been a pretty fun follow on Twitter. I don't know if you saw him a couple weeks ago troll Paul George.
Oh my gosh, he has been popping off, man. Like he is on another level right now with some of his tweets. The thing with Tobias is like, even though like he's still like he's going to be 33 next season, so like that's still pretty young. But at the same time, this is going to be his 15th season of NBA hoops. That is a long time, and that is a lot of miles. And so if this is a point in his career where he just starts to kind of slide into a slightly different role, kind of like one of like the top reserves where he doesn't necessarily start every night, but can still start a lot of nights for you based on, injuries, attrition, resting, all those different things. I certainly think he's the type of guy where I don't think his ego would get in the way of what would be best for the team. So
yeah,
my thing has always been, because like if you're to make the money work, I know people go, oh well, like you can move Tobias, like that's a very movable contract, and it is. But like to me, like Tobias is the type of guy where I don't want to like oversell his value to the team, but like I think it would be a massive disservice to undersell it as well, just because every chance JB had, he talked about how how important Tobias was to this team. And I truly think like he is like one of those guys where like if you move off of Tobias Harris and if you like make a transaction that he's involved, you have to know for a fact that the culture that you've built can still stay intact, and that you're only going to take a step up after making that move. Because again, it's not even as much as like the player on the court. It's really having that type of presence in person in the locker room.
Yeah, like this. I think that kind of gets undersold and swept under the rug because people just look at the contract and the points per game. They don't look at the off the court. They don't look at the veteran leadership that he brings. And that's why the Pistons brought him back in the first place, is because they knew during Troy's regime, they had vets, but they didn't have a vet like Tobias to hold everyone accountable and keep them professional and, teach them how to, keep their body right so they can play through a full 82 game NBA season. Ryan, I'm going to block you if you ever do this again. You trying to remind me of this era. Remember when Stan started John Lure over Tobias for a little? You're going to get blocked, right?
Never bring up John Lure is like a Voldemort type name to me, man. My gosh.
Man, he had the nastiest crossover on Chris Paul I've ever seen in my life. I don't know if you've ever seen that crossover. If you guys haven't, just look up John Lure crosses over Chris Paul. It's probably one of the nastiest crossovers I've ever seen. I'm just kidding, Ryan. It's all love, man. But
at first I was like, did someone like say like a slur or something in the chat? And I was like, oh, John Lure. Okay, yeah, they kind of did.
I have not thought about John Lure in so long. He was a good guy, though. He was a good guy. He retired really early. I was kind of surprised about that, but
better person than he was a player, but that's okay.
Yeah, it's I mean, it was like Stan Van's like I think he wanted Draymond. Draymond said no, he wanted Al Horford. Al Horford said no. He said, well, I gotta spend the money somehow. Hey, John Lure, here's $50 million. Take it.
Yeah, he was just another one of those guys where I was like, oh, John Lure, oh, he could be pretty good. And then just turned out to totally not be.
Yeah. Kyle, I see your comment about Lauri. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. He had a question about Lauri Markkanen, which, man, there was some stuff about that today, which I was not fully expecting. I wanted to actually shift over to Jake Laravia. There was an article that the Basketball Insider had the opportunity to talk with him, and I just kind of took the snippet from the article and we can kind of react to it. It says, if Laravia doesn't end up back in Sacramento, he hopes to land on a young up-and-coming team looking to contend for a championship. Aside from Sacramento, Laravia mentioned Orlando, Detroit, San Antonio, and Denver as possible teams he wants to play for. Sean, you know what's so weird? We went from players not wanting to play here to young, up-and-coming stretch fours that want to play here now.
In a calendar year.
It's insane, like, what winning does to a franchise. I don't know how familiar you are with a Jake Laravia. Got drafted by Memphis, first-round pick. He's with the Kings currently. I like him as a kind of like a buy low option. If you really can't get the type of players that you want in free agency, shot 40% from three. Would you entertain bringing a guy like that to the Detroit Pistons?
Yeah, I mean, he's one of those, he's just one of those role players that, you're getting a lot of effort out of, but also you can get like a lot of quality shooting. He's one of those Memphis guys that just like suddenly gave you a lot more than you could expect. I definitely think he's someone that, that the Pistons like should have on their radar. And if they're able to go out and like, if the money is right and the market makes sense, to bring him in, I definitely think he's someone, especially if you're not able to bring back like a Hardaway Jr. or a Beasley or a Schroeder. Like if that's something that frees up, I definitely think he's someone who makes a lot of sense. But like to your point, Anthony, it's like literally almost a year ago to the date, I was there draft night after the Pistons selected Ron Holland, and Trajan did not mince words, during his press conference saying that they couldn't get guys to come out and work out for drafts, like to do their draft workout in Detroit, because agents were like, no, we're not sending our guys there. And listen, who could have blamed them? Now, with their ascension, like, it is amazing just how quickly things can flip. The fact that like Detroit is a potential destination for guys like a Cade Cunningham is an enticing proposition for guys to play alongside. So I definitely think like he's one of those guys where like there would certainly be more upside than like a Simone Fontecchio. And like if you're talking about like how do you take those next steps, or how do you get to where you can get closer to winning a championship, rounding out your rotation really is one of the ways. And I think Sacramento is going to really want to try to bring Laravia back because they need that type of player. But if he does indeed, like become available and those stars, kind of do align, I wouldn't hate it at all. That's for sure.
Me either. I mean, when you're talking about possibly upgrading the backup power forward position, I think if you watch Laravia and you watch Simone, there are things that Laravia does a lot better than Simone does. And I think it would be a clear upgrade. I was just really surprised that the Pistons were mentioned as a team and in the same article contend for a championship in a few years. I'm like, man, like Pistons had a really good season. We're getting rotational role players like that. They kind of look at Cade. They look at, with Sar. They're like, yeah, Pistons are on the come up. I could play with Cade. I could hit a bunch of threes for the Pistons.
Yeah, man, it is crazy just how much things can, like, the conversation can completely change on a flip of a dime if your team goes out and does what it's supposed to or makes that type of statement. Like, we were just talking about a 14-win team like this time last year and going out and getting the right coach and the right front office, and now it's like, okay, well, if they make the right moves, is an Eastern Conference Finals in reach for this team? And the fact that is a completely different conversation is crazy in and of itself. And so, yeah, I like you said, the fact that the Pistons are being mentioned in these types of conversations as like a contending young team, it's not even the fact that like a Jake Laravia feels this way. It's the fact that players are starting to feel this way. And if Jake Laravia feels this way, does the Naz Reed feel that way? Does the next available star via trade feel that way? That's the stuff that gets really interesting.
Yeah, it really does. I completely just started a chain reaction with Pistons fans because I said, don't mention John Lure. We have Henry Ellison in the chat, Pepe Sanchez.
Y'all are monsters.
Oh my, you guys are
sickos.
Tony Mitchell. Oh my God. Like you're going down memory lane.
Oh my gosh. What are you guys doing to yourselves? Good Lord.
Yeah. Shout out to Stevie J. Mr. Beasley watches Pistons Talk Instagram. He actually followed me before he signed in Detroit, I was like, huh. Are the Pistons about to sign Malik? And then
you're just like,
signed him? I wish. I wish I had Brian Windhorst's sources. I really do, man. Shout out to you, Stevie J. We'll probably talk about Malik's comment in a little bit. There's a Caris LeVert reporting a couple of, I want to say it might have been last week. I just did not get a chance to actually talk about it. This does come from Sam Amico saying that the Pistons do have interest in LeVert. He's a Michigan guy. Don't really know what his market is. I'd assume he probably wants to get paid one more time before he eventually, does decline a little bit. But when you think about a Caris LeVert, do you think the Pistons should be interested in a player like him?
He makes a lot of sense. He's one of those role players that, that can definitely give you solid contributions. My one trepidation with Caris LeVert and why I don't necessarily know if he fits the Trajan Langdon mold necessarily, to me, it just comes down to overall durability and health. I mean, the last couple of years, he was able to get back to like the 60+ game, mark and able to play more games. But Caris LeVert is just someone, unfortunately, throughout his career, has just been plagued with some injuries and some weird, freaky stuff. But when he is available, he is someone that gives you a solid contribution. He would be someone, especially if you don't have like a Dennis Schroeder on the roster that can help and initiate some offense in the second unit, is someone that can just give you, like a reliable scoring option, coming off the bench. He's a good player. He's someone that, again, he's kind of like in the Miles Turner ilk of someone I feel like who's kind of been on the Pistons radar for a long time, almost like a will they, won't they type thing. If again, I think it's someone who would make a lot of sense. I don't necessarily think it will happen, but again, if they're not able to bring back like a Malik Beasley or things like that, I think LeVert is definitely like a worthy conversation to be had about someone coming in. I think you at least talk to him for sure.
Yeah, I think not playing in as many NBA games, I think is something that Pistons fans should probably look at.
Yeah.
You know, the guys that Trajan brought in, they were relatively healthy in their NBA careers. Um, and it's not to say that Caris LeVert isn't a good player, maybe not worth the risk. It's just a health thing with him. It seems like he's injured each and every year. I think it would be a slight upgrade over Tim Hardaway Jr. I don't really know how big of an upgrade it would be.
Right.
But I'm not entirely sure if they want to go that route to, bring in a veteran shooting guard, because I honestly think Jaden Ivy is going to come back, play as good as he was playing, because I still think that there's still another gear with him, even though he did, suffer that injury. I don't really think it's going to really affect his athleticism
No.
um, at all. And when I look at a guy like a LeVert, maybe they just want to, bring back Beasley. You got Jaden Ivy, and who knows what you do with Marcus Sasser if he's still on the roster. Who knows? I don't really think they're going to want to really carry 3-4 shooting guards on the roster.
No, I don't think so. Especially ones that like Caris isn't necessarily known for, his defensive acumen either, so you want someone that, that you can really rely on kind of on both sides of the court. To me, there's a little too many red flags when it comes to Caris LeVert. Again, if he's someone that you can bring in at the right price and for the right, for the right opportunity, I definitely think it makes a lot of sense. But just, the question is how much is he going to be looking to make? He's coming off of making like 16 million in Atlanta. A lot of guys at this stage in career aren't always necessarily looking for pay cuts. So yeah, LeVert is certainly going to be one of those guys. I think is going to be worth monitoring this offseason, because at the very least, it definitely does make sense on paper.
Yeah, I think a lot of the names that we read in these articles and rumor mills, that make sense on paper, and then they play here, and then you're like, yeah, they don't fit.
Right.
It sounds
Right.
fun when you're like throwing them in trade machines and stuff like that. We're going to talk about Lauri Markkanen. And there was a report from Jake Weinbach that had reported that not only the Pistons, I have the tweet pulled up right here, that the Heat, Pistons, Sixers, and Spurs are among teams that could check in on Lauri Markkanen's availability this summer. It's unclear if the Jazz are willing to entertain offers on the All-Star forward, but there should be a firm interest in Markkanen's services once again. Now, this is the main reason why we're talking about it. So I posted this on my Instagram. If you guys follow me, you already know I posted this. But Malik Beasley decided to comment on it and says, quote, "We have ties. I can make it happen." So I don't really know what to make of this, Sean. I don't know if Bees is just having fun on social media. It's off season, just getting fans to talk about something. I know there have been so many teams that probably want a Lauri Markkanen, stretch 4. Seemed like he really put it together under JB in Cleveland, if I'm being honest. So there's kind of that connection there. I think the only thing where I kind of have some pushback on it is that big contract he signed. But how do you feel about a Lauri Markkanen, and do you think it would be a solid move for the Pistons to try to acquire him via trade?
Yeah, man. I mean, Lauri Markkanen, the player, is awesome. I mean, like if you're solely evaluating the basketball fit, Lauri Markkanen is one of those guys that makes a ton of sense to slot in alongside, like a Cade Cunningham and the rest of this lineup. And like, he's someone you can play at the 3. He's someone you can play at the 4. He's someone that for stretches, I think you can play at the 5 as well. You can really do a lot of different things with Lauri Markkanen. And, like, listen, if the opportunity were to present itself in a way where it wouldn't cost you an arm and a leg, I absolutely think Detroit would have those discussions. Now, Malik saying this is great. There's a couple things I think we need to point out for a little bit of a check of reality. For one, Malik still needs to 100% be a Piston next year. That's probably the biggest thing of this whole equation, And in assuming he is a Piston next season, it's great that he has ties and can make it happen. But it's really about Trajan Langdon being able to make it happen, because Lauri Markkanen's not a free agent. Not at all. You'd have to go out and get him on the open market. And if you're the Utah Jazz, who just fell to the 5th overall pick in the lottery after having the worst record and the best odds to go get Cooper Flagg, and you just had another disastrous season with no, positive outcome out of it, I think they're going to start looking to be as competitive as possible as soon as possible. And Lauri Markkanen has made it clear that he wants to be there and he wants to be a part of winning there. I like the game logs. I don't even think I could take seriously. Like if we're like, oh, well, looking at durability, because like ever since like Lauri's been in Utah, he hasn't been shut down because of health. He's been shut down because they've been winning when he's on the court and they need to go out and tank. And so he's just getting shut down prematurely each season. I think if you're Utah, like I think this is the year where they have to start like really trying to be competitive. Like if they want to take one more swing at the lottery, makes a lot of sense to move on from Lauri now. But I'm telling you, man, they have been pitiful for a long time now. And it's a really hard thing to put a fan base through. If I'm Utah, like it's even though it's going to be really hard to do so in that conference, I think if there's anything that you've learned over the last couple of years at the lottery, you almost have as good of a chance trying to be competitive to go get the number 1 pick as you do losing as much as they have. So I think personally the odds on this one are going to be really low, because then that just throws into what would the Pistons have to give up in a trade. And I think I think from what Utah has said in the past, I think they covet a little too much for Lauri Markkanen. And I don't know how much of a roster you'd have to field around Cade and Markkanen after that deal would be done for Utah to say yes. Because the other thing I will say as something that needs to be considered is the fact that, do you really want to enter into trade negotiations with Danny Ainge? And do you really think you're going to get the best out of a deal with Danny Ainge? Because we thought we did with Simone. Might not have. I don't know if they got anyone that was a stud in return, but I don't know if we could definitely say the Pistons won that trade.
Yeah, it's kind of a mystery how he played well under Monty, but struggled under JB. Maybe it was just broken, but I don't know.
I mean, to me, it's not much of a mystery. Like he had surgery in the offseason. He wasn't really able to play a whole ton. Like he was really just like recovering for the most of the offseason. I think he also had a child. I don't want to say that definitively, but I'm pretty sure he had some pretty major stuff with his family. So part of me wonders if he is on the team next year, if he gets his legs under him, if he feels a little bit better, if he can kind of look more like the Simone that we saw the year before, because I just refuse to believe that Simone is just suddenly a bad basketball player, because the problem isn't up here. It's not. It's his legs. It's getting that under him. It's being able to shoot at a consistent level. To me, that was the problem with Simone this year. But I'm just interested to see what happens with him for sure.
Yeah, same here. It kind of circling back to Lauri. Lauri to me on paper sounds great, but then once you look at his contract and then you look how much money he's owed over the next few seasons, and then you look at Cade's rookie supermax that goes into effect, and then you kind of look at the Pistons books and you're like, man, do I really want to give up like a young guy and multiple picks?
And he's already 28.
Yeah, it's like, do you think a Cade, Lauri, let's just say Cade, Lauri, Asar can, get you to the NBA Finals?
Probably not. It'd be really interesting, but that's kind of the other thing too, is yeah, we saw Lauri have an awesome season, all-star season a couple years ago, but are we sure he's that guy fully? Are we 100% positive that he is a like a consensus all-star caliber player year in and year out? Like, I don't know. Like if he's alongside a Cade, that's someone who can elevate his game. And perhaps you could argue, he really had to do a lot of things himself in Utah. If you were to put him alongside a Cade, that'd free him up to do a lot of things. But to me, that again, it's just one of those things where with his age and with what he's going to get paid and what you would have to trade to get him, because you're giving up at least Ivy or Duren, and then they're probably going to want Ron. They're probably going to want Ron too, and probably Bobby. And of those 4 picks that the Pistons would have to trade, they'd probably want at least 2 of them. They would probably ask for 3. And at that point, you're like, for Lauri Markkanen, I don't know about that.
Yeah, it's kind of like, I know me and you have had conversations about like who could possibly be like a second or third option. I think Lauri always kind of gets mentioned like really briefly, but I think once people look at the contract, they're like, I'm out. And I don't blame them there, but like eventually they're gonna make a big move. I think Bees is just kind of trolling us. Just got back from vacation, just having fun, saying I can make
for sure.
Hell. I knowing him, he's probably just like, hey, watch this.
Oh, for sure. He is 100% the guy that likes to stir up chaos and just have some fun. And I think he's probably, just like, oh, that's my guy. You know what I mean? Just probably saw that and wanted to have some good fun with it. But yeah, the other thing too is like, it's not like because really, I think like people are going to compare it to a Pascal Siakam trade just because the Pistons are kind of similar. And that is, kind of the thing that put the Pacers in the contention area. Like with a Pascal Siakam, he's been there. He's done that. He's someone who has like, championship pedigree and experience. And all due respect to Lauri Markkanen, but I'm pretty sure isn't his only playoff experience when he was in Cleveland and like some form of like very minimal, like this isn't a guy who has like, it's not like you have like a whole lot of moments where you're like, you need Lauri Markkanen to come in and take you over the top because he's been there and done that. Like he's been a part of a lot of mid teams throughout his career.
Yeah, I mean, at least with the Siakam thing you mentioned, he was on a championship team and he had that experience. I don't know off the top of my head how much playoff experience he does have. I did tell Kyle I would answer his question. Would you
none, by the way? His basketball reference doesn't show any playoff games being logged, so he does not have playoff experience.
Kyle Metz asked, would you give up Ron and Ivy to get Lauri? Probably not, but this full transparency, I have not sold my Jaden Ivy stock, and I get shit for it every day. From Pistons Twitter, they give me so much shit for not giving up on Jaden Ivy and trying to move on from him.
Did people forget how good he was? Not even like the season leading up to the injury. Do people remember how good he was the night he got injured? Like that team was like piecing things together. Like he was playing all do yourself a favor. If you have League Pass, go on League Pass and watch that game up until Jaden Ivy gets hurt and tell me you want to trade that guy. Like I understand like he's probably like the most enticing piece in whatever exchange you were to make to go get like an all-star caliber player to put alongside like a Cade Cunningham, but you might not have to look too hard for an all-star caliber player to put alongside Cade if Ivy becomes the player that we all think he can be.
Yeah, that's true. And I know at the top of the podcast, we're talking about the Pistons being more aggressive and taking that next jump and making that next big move. I do know one of these guys is getting traded. It's just like, I think I fall victim of we draft the guy. He's been here for going on 3-4 years. I'm like invested into, Jaden Ivy developing and getting better. I think I just have an attachment issue. I did the same thing with Sadiq Bey. I was
we all overvalue the players that we have for sure. To me, like the reason why, me removing any, because I try my best to just solely look at it from a objective standpoint. But even with Ivy, like to me, it's like, if you're just looking at it objectively, this is the summer where you can have like those conversations about like having an extension. Like I still bring up the point of like not saying that like Ivy has to stay here for years to come, but like sign him to a Jalen Green type contract. Get him a deal where he can still get paid, but it's still very much tradable to where if there is an opportunity, you can go out and make a move. But like, he's just the type of guy where you do not move on from him unless you are 100% sure that the guy you are getting in return is not only better now, but will be better in the future. Because Ivy's the type of athlete that you don't really want to give up on. He has the type of motor that you don't necessarily want to give up on. And then you also just look at the skills that he's needed to work on since coming into the league and tracking his improvement. He has a trajectory that you don't really want to give up on either. And the injury, all like medical experts and everyone who's talked about it has said the type of break that he's had should not impact his athleticism. To me, it's like, at least give it till the deadline and see if that guy is still the guy that, you know, that you think he can be, because we've not seen many games of Ivy, Asar, Cade, and Duren in the lineup together. We have not seen many at all. For all the success the Pistons have had and all this talks of what this young core can be due to injuries, due to health, all these different things, those guys have hardly touched the court together. I just think that's something to be really mindful of before you go out and pull the trigger.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I don't know what type of contract extension he could get. I know you had mentioned the Jalen Green contract, which maybe you could have those conversations and have talks like that. I don't know. I think he could get $30 million a year. I don't really think that's out of the ballpark. To me, I think if I was Trajan, I want to see a little bit more before I have like, you know, extension talks and conversations, because I don't know what they are. Like, if you get them on a cheap deal and they perform so well throughout their contract, then you're screwed and you have to pay them like market value, because someone's going to pay them market value. They're in restricted free agency.
It's the Jalen Brunson conundrum that Dallas found themselves in. Like, they were in a spot where they could have signed him for a 4-year, $52 million deal. And he wanted to sign the deal. He wanted to be there, but they kept hanging off because they wanted to wait to see if they could lure a star or use Brunson as like a trade chip. And then they waited too long. He became that star that they hoped he could be, that they hoped that they could put alongside Luka. And by the time they realized it, he walked and he was gone. And so not to say that he's going to be Jalen Brunson and turn into the superstar player. That's not what I'm saying at all. But the cautionary part of that story is, if you rest on your laurels and sit on your hands too long, you could potentially, you know, just either watch like whatever market value could have gotten him at just completely skyrocket, or you could potentially lose him for nothing if you go out and don't play your chips right. And so, it's definitely an interesting balance that Trajan has to walk. Let me ask you this. I don't want to put you on the spot too much, so if you don't have an answer, that's okay. If you were Trajan Langdon and you could only extend one this summer, Jalen Duren or Jaden Ivy, which one did you feel more comfortable extending? Because even me, I like, full disclosure, Anthony, I just asked you that question. I don't know if I have an answer. I don't know. I'd maybe lean Duren just because of the injury, maybe, and the pick and roll combination of Caden Duren. But like, at the same time, though, you could probably get Ivy at a pretty reasonable deal right now.
That's the tricky part of the question, because like, I could think about Duren being 21 years old and getting him on a contract extension, because it's one of Cade's favorite lob targets. The chemistry there is amazing.
Is that something like you put like a poll in the chat? I don't want to like I don't know if that's a thing or not, but I'd be curious to see like how Pistons fans would respond to that.
Yeah, I can do a poll in the chat right now, but the more I'm thinking about this, Sean, you know, with Duren and Ivy, I'm thinking about like all the pros and cons, like with, you know, extending a Jalen Duren, because it could backfire.
Yeah,
it 100% could backfire. If you are the Detroit Pistons, But in Ivy's case, I don't really know if the Pistons could get a Jaden Ivy in free agency right now. I'd probably go Duren if I had to do it just right now. What would you do? Would you do Duren or would you do Ivy?
To me, I very much go back and forth. If you're just going off of, what you have seen as of today, I think you probably just, again, with the partnership and the pick and roll and just how much, they've elevated each other. I think you probably have to lean Duren slightly, but I think to your point, this could almost be like kind of like an Andre Drummond like extension talk where it's like, it's like, all right, we pay you, but we hope that what that means? Like, we hope you take that next step and you take this seriously. Some guys play with a little bit more fire under them in a contract year, and then things just don't fully materialize after that. So to me, if I'm Trajan, the thing that I would have to know for a fact before I sign Jalen Duren is that the motor stuff isn't going to be an issue going forward, that he's going to be mentally engaged, that you're going to see improvement on some of that stuff. Because Duren said himself, he came out playing soft to begin last year. I was in the room when he said it, so that's why I have with Ivy, that's why it's so the injury makes it so difficult, because if the injury wasn't a thing and we are just talking about motor and production and all of those things, Ivy checks all of those boxes. It's just for him, it's the defensive aspect. And if he can continue to stay healthy and that on-court chemistry with Cade can continue to develop. I personally, to me, it is a total toss-up, and I could see the argument for extending one over the other. You probably just go with Duren just because of just of what you've seen thus far. But to me, it isn't an obvious answer.
No, I think more Pistons fans would lean towards Duren than they would Ivy, just because they question the second option conversation that just gets tossed around like crazy. I mean, I'm trying to think who I talked with. I think it was Bryce. We talked about it, and we went down each avenue of like pros and cons of extending Ivy too early. If he performs so well that you give him kind of like a descending contract, and then you have to pay him market value. With Duren, I think you could look at a Nick Claxton. I think Duren could easily get $100 million, 100 million, 125 million easily. But Kyle does make a great point that Duren might have to see what the market is to be humble enough to take what it actually is worth. And I agree there. And he also kind of talked about Ivy, that Ivy more likely to sign a number that the Pistons feel good about because of the injury stuff. The injury stuff could actually benefit the Pistons.
Yes,
because they could go and say, well, we don't really know if you're going to be the same type of player. And maybe Ivy signs for less than market value, and the Pistons don't really have to have those tough conversations because, I think Ivy could get 30, depending on what team likes him enough if he goes into restricted free agency. I think he's a very intriguing young player that's only 23 years old still. But I am glad that I'm not in the front office, because that's a stressful job to make decisions on young guys and who can hit their ceiling, who can bank on potential. If they don't, then you got two guys that are at the end of the day maybe bench players and big deals.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where the restricted free agency thing is such a dangerous game to play. If it is one of those things where if you do put those guys in a prove it year and they do go out and perform, it is one of those things where you would be glad to match whatever number came in and to sign them to an offer. But it's just, again, it's also kind of like one of those things of how do you expect them to change, if at all, after they get paid? How do you project them to handle that pressure and to go, to be able to go forward. And so, that's why to me, it is such an interesting question. And, we're going to learn an awful lot about, and I think about what Trajan thinks of these players, but I still think even, like as we've talked about, like the players, kind of like before of like Naz Reed or any of those guys, that's why I kind of like that type of move where you can go out and make a sizable improvement on your roster, but perhaps not have to move on from either of those guys day one.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I mean, the last center that signed a contract extension was Andre Drummond.
Yeah.
And I'll say I don't think he lived up to the contract. Oh, Stu too. I'm talking about like over $100 million.
Oh, for sure. A big boy contract.
Yeah, I mean, because I think Duren could kind of be in that same ballpark because the Pistons paid Drummond, and for what it's worth, I mean, it's shit rosters around him, but I still don't think that he played up to the standard that I think a lot of fans wanted him to play. Still had the 2020 games, double doubles, but it was just a consistency thing. Same thing could happen to Duren, but Duren could shut us all up, could develop, could get better, could lock in more on a consistent basis like he did in the playoffs. But again, Trajan has got his work cut out for him because those are tough conversations to have. Agents want their players that they represent to get paid. Hopefully it doesn't break the bank too much.
Yeah, I mean, these are, for a lot of these guys, this is going to be either their first big contract or their only big contract. And so you're going to, do everything in your power to maximize whatever, type of deal that can be. I think if you're Jaden Ivy, the reason why it makes sense to lock him down at like, kind of like almost at like a discounted rate versus what he could have been is because for him, it gives him that flexibility. It gives him that financial guarantee and, that level of pay that he hasn't gotten before. It takes care of him and his family, but also it gives him that window to, if he does perform up to what he can be, it sets him up for that bigger payday down the road. And so, yeah, what Trajan does will be fascinating. I think, again, both guys were really important to, what they did last year and what they can do going forward if they stay as is. So again, that to your point, that's why I am glad to not be a front office executive. Why I like being behind the microphone a lot more.
Yeah, I would not want to be in the front office trying to finagle contracts because I guarantee you, Sean, I would probably overpay someone. Like I wanted to pay Simone Fonseca last offseason $20 million.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. It's like only 17 votes, but only 7 minutes in. I'm curious to see how this goes as the pod goes on. But right now it's 60-40 at Jaden Ivy over Duren.
See, that's what I'm saying. Like, I don't know. Like, because people on YouTube are completely different on Twitter, and you know that. People on Twitter can be,
and the people on Twitter are completely different than the people on Reddit
and Instagram, and don't even go in the Facebook groups.
Oh dear God, do not go on the Facebook group. Do not.
Trust me, I own one. I own a Detroit Pistons Facebook group. The conversations that we have, man. Oh my, like we're talking about Zion before like the legal stuff happened and like what fans were willing to give up to get him. I'm like, I gotta log off. Like, this is bad for my mental health. Like, there's no way I'm giving that much up for a guy that can't stay healthy. I'm like, good Lord, man.
I've had to learn when I hear like someone like when there's just a certain level of understanding that isn't there with basketball where I would just go, yeah. Uh-huh. You got it, buddy. Like there's really not a whole lot to say at that point. It's like, sure, pal, you can lead a horse to water.
Yeah, man, it's honestly crazy. Doesn't look like we have any more Q&A. We have one Q&A question, which comes from King. Wanted to know if we would take Gary Trent Jr. over Tim Hardaway Jr. I would. I don't know about you.
I mean, yeah. I think I think a lot of people would. He's a solid, solid young, like 3-point shooter. That heater he was on in the playoffs was nuts. he's another one of those guys. It's like really hard to figure out like what his market value is and like what exactly, like he's going to bring. Cause he was some of those probably like thinking he was up for a big payday and he signed for a vet minimum last year. So I'm sure, after his performance in Milwaukee, he's probably going to be looking to get like a little bit of a more sizable contract. But yeah. I've always liked Gary Trent Jr.
I think he's under the same boat as Malik in terms of like he was on a cheap deal last year, but he obviously wants to get paid this free agency period. I've been high on Gary Trent since he was in Toronto, so I'd love him, but I don't know if it's going to be in Detroit.
I've been a fan of his since his Portland days. Real ones remember when he was a Portland Trailblazer.
I completely forgot about that. I always forget Portland's an NBA franchise sometimes because they've been like kind of bad since the Dame trade.
Yeah.
But they were
out Chauncey though. He's got him playing pretty well. Didn't he get extended?
Yeah, he did.
Good for Chauncey, man. A lot of people had him already out of there and fired before the season even started.
Yeah, like that rookie they drafted, Kamara. Like someone I was on Portland Trailblazers like Reddit, and they're like Kamara like saved everyone's job just for like how good he was. I was like, yeah, that kid's gonna be a dog. Making an all defensive team your rookie year, like that's how you know you're good.
Anthony, do we need to get you out more if you're on the Trailblazers Reddit?
Oh man, I don't even know why. I was just scrolling on Reddit and like a post popped up, and it was about like how they could have had Kevin Durant over Greg Oden, and then I kind of just read the thread, and then I went down the rabbit hole, and I was just like, oh wow, these guys are psychos. They're mad like all the time.
Yeah, they are sickos. Oh, before we go, can we talk about one thing that just not necessarily super serious, but like what the hell is happening here? NBA Finals, Game 1, not even anything on the court to mention that this is a finals game. Not sure if a whole lot of people remember the like 2000s and like 2010 like NBA Finals hoops. They used to have a giant old Larry O'Brien trophy on the logo mid-court to signify that the finals were going down. And the league keeps saying that the reports are that it was slippery, and that's why the league got rid of it. But are you telling me that those in-season tournament courts that look like a freaking slip and slide in comparison, we can do all that, but we can't put together something for the finals? Like if you're watching right now, they have like these digital, like clearly they saw the reaction on Twitter. And so they put these like Larry O'Brien logos where they had like sponsorships on Game 1. But I'm curious to hear what your thoughts are, because to me, it's like, I have liked a lot of things that Adam Silver has done with the league. To me, the biggest miss has just been some of this marketing and presentation stuff where it's like, what are we doing? Why are we not making the finals the biggest thing in making the in-season tournament like it's this giant, like, grand deal? Yeah, backwards to me.
I don't understand it. Like my stance on the in-season tournament. I think it's stupid. I think it's pointless too. I don't get how you can have like a championship decal on an in-season tournament, but you can't do it in the NBA Finals because it just looks like a regular basketball game to me.
Yeah.
Like if the players were complaining that the decal was slippery and messing up their grip, okay, that was a long time ago. Technology has advanced.
Yeah.
Like the decal I'm looking at right now, Sean, it looks really cheap and chintzy. Like Game 1, all I saw was YouTube TV stuff on the court. I'm like,
yeah,
it's a YouTube TV NBA Finals. That's just like, what do we? I don't know. Adam Silver has not been my favorite commissioner. He just really hasn't. I think he's just way too obsessed with tournaments, and he wants to be friends with every NBA player, and I think that's the problem versus Stern, where Stern acted like their boss. Adam Silver just wants to be buddy with everybody, and it just stupid stuff like messing with the All-Star game, something so simple you would think no one would touch it, to know that they're actually watching the NBA playoffs or the NBA finals. Like,
Well,
it doesn't have to be like the big trophy like they used to be, but maybe on the side it says NBA finals on it.
yeah. The only area I would push back is I do think the All-Star break was definitively broken. Otherwise, they wouldn't be trying so hard to fix it.
Yeah.
Even when they did bring it back to East versus West for a couple of years, that East versus West showing in Indianapolis was pretty pathetic last year in the All-Star game. So I feel for him from that standpoint. I think there's definitely like I think Adam Silver, like the best thing he's done without a doubt is bring parity to the league in a way in which we perhaps haven't seen before. Like I think that's something you can't take away from Adam Silver, but there's clearly a fascination with European soccer and with how they do things and seeing if they can translate any of that to the game of basketball. And listen, I still do I think the in-season tournament is this massive deal at the moment? I wouldn't necessarily say so, but I still point to the Pacers where they, as like a young team, they maximized that opportunity and got to the in-season tournament finals, and then saw an opportunity after that to go out and make a trade to get Pascal, and that's what led them to the championship. So I still think if you're a young team like the Pistons, the in-season tournament can be amazing for you. But I do think definitely to your point, there are some things that just, that just inherently have declined under the Adam Silver NBA. I do think though, even with all that said, I would take all of the flaws of the Adam Silver NBA over where we were towards the end of the David Stern NBA, because the parity was out of control. The tanking was getting really bad. There were just a lot of things in the David Stern NBA that were not ideal, I think is the way I would put it.
Yeah, I agree with that. I just think a lot of the stuff off the court, I'm not going to get into particular players, but because there's so much drama. I still remember listening to Carmelo Anthony saying David Stern knew where I was at all times. She said he had people watching me. That's how bad, the David Stern led NBA was. But something like a decal, Sean, I if it's not broke, don't try to fix it.
At the very least, put the freaking cursive on the court. You know what I'm saying? Just have something that says finals on the court. It's not that hard. We used to have and to me, even why did they get rid of the playoff logo on the court? Just little things like that signify this is a bigger thing. You can look, you can see all the people wearing the t-shirts and that's cool. But to me, it's just those little things that I miss, those small touches that just added a little extra to what you were watching,
Yeah, the presentation I think has gone down the window too. I feel so bad for Doris Burke because she's worked her whole life to get to that point, and it's just she's just put in a really bad position. If they were gonna replace Jeff Van Gundy and Mark Jackson with Mike Breen, ESPN should have done a way better job preparing her for the playoffs. I mean, there was some stuff when it was I think it was the Wolf series, and she made a comment that French don't like Germans, and people were just crashing out over that. I was just yeah, that's probably not the time to say that. But I mean, I'd be lying to you if I said I didn't miss Jeff Van Gundy and Mark Jackson bickering and Mike Breen just getting pissed off, and he's the only one calling the game.
Yep. I also just think there's something to be said too. And I know this is a conversation that's been had on social media quite a bit. Keith Black actually put out a really good post, talking about this too, of one of the biggest problems facing the league is the fact that we have our the major media partners don't know how to cover the league or to do it in a way that actually highlights the entirety of the league. We talk way too much about market size and star power and this is the only sport that there's this massive obsession with ratings and, like all of those different things. Like, can we just celebrate the fact that we have two awesome young teams facing off in a finals and could win their franchise's first title? Like, is that not a big thing to talk about?
All right. Yeah, it doesn't help when you have like certain people that have podcasts like Gilbert Arenas like talking about like how Karl Anthony Towns moves like a B word, or giving up. I mean, he had his Pistons takes too, saying like I'd give up on a star because he only averaged 10 points a game. And First Take doesn't do it any justice because these guys cannot break down the game of basketball. That's why JJ Redick was just like a breath of fresh air, because you could actually talk basketball.
I have JB on there the last couple weeks has been really cool.
Yeah, JB's breaking down the game, and I don't know, man. Maybe after coaching, he's actually on First Take because just the way he can articulate something, it's refreshing. But man, it's the league's in a sad state, Sean. It really is.
Yeah, I mean, just like the fact that we don't have enough people that just celebrate the game, or like you said, like break down and truly like analyze the game. Don't get me wrong, the drama is part of the fun of the league. The intrigue is part of like what makes the NBA the greatest soap opera in sports. But at the same time, that has to be entrenched in the hoops. And it has to be, like based in basketball. And we can keep having all of these conversations about who's going to be the next face of the NBA, or, like all these like big markets and like, what's going on there. But the truth of the matter is you're not going to have another face of the league if you're not shining a light on these like potential up and comers. Like another thing, Keith, I think Keith said this in his tweet as well. Is like, it's not like they were caught off guard by Oklahoma City and Indiana being good. Both of these teams were awesome last year. It's not like they didn't have an entire year or like an offseason to go, hey, how can we put the Thunder on TV more? How can we put the Pacers on TV more? They just didn't.
Yeah, it's weird. I know Ship God says we hear about the Knicks every day. You're going to hear about the Knicks every day until they hire a new coach. And the way that they've been going through the process is really weird. They're trying to get interviews with coaches that are already coaching NBA teams. Good luck with that, because I don't think they have a backup plan. And I think the Rick Brunson. I read a report. I don't know how true it is, but a lot of players were very uneasy with how much control he actually has.
Yep.
Because he's really close with James Dolan. That's another team, Sean. I could see them imploding.
Yeah.
Just because of the coaching situation.
Well, yeah, you want to talk about a team that the Pistons could look at and go, oh, well, we're not necessarily super afraid of them. Before they made any moves, the Pistons felt like they were, they felt pretty competitive against the Knicks. Now you seemingly have James Dolan in the mix again, making decisions and being involved, which, like, listen, you could see the Vince Goodwill report where he talked about how, Dolan was reportedly the one leading. Like, he wasn't just sitting in the exit interviews, Anthony. He was leading the exit interviews. Leon was secondary in those.
Wow.
Which, one of the big things that's kind of gone under discussed of like the success of the Knicks is James Dolan's been so, like he's been so enamored with the Sphere out in Las Vegas and opening spheres throughout the world and other places. Like he's, a lot of what he does when he's not like focusing on the Knicks is like his MSG business, but also like is like he's really fascinated with music and all those different things. Now that the Knicks are a fun, shiny toy to play with again, I think you're going to see Dolan getting his grubby fingers all over it. And if that's indeed what's going to happen, like, unless they somehow get prime Phil Jackson this summer, like, I just don't know what coach takes him over the top, especially if, the reports that are being believed and like one of their favorite candidates, if they bring in Jason Kidd, how's that taking him over the top?
Jason Kidd's I would say a solid coach, but for that team, I could see two prime candidates: Mike Malone, who I think is going to get hired, But
just hiring another Tibbs at that point.
Yeah, that's the problem.
You're getting Tibbs to Electric Boogaloo when you're bringing in Mike Malone.
I think they need a coach that is stern, but he's open to ideas and listening to his assistant coaches. Like when I was watching the playoffs against the Pistons, Sean, when they would try to challenge something, like Tibbs would look down at his bench and they'd be talking to him, and then he wouldn't pay attention to him.
Yeah,
it's just like I felt like there was a disconnect with the assistant coaches. Like Jalen Brunson's dad, Rick Brunson, was the only one that was actually kind of standing up and coaching them. I mean, there's some, former Pistons assistants like Mark Bryant was on that coaching staff, Maurice Cheeks, but you never really saw those guys like interact like the way our coaches do. Like you can visibly see like Luke Walton, Jarrett Jack.
Did you see Luke Walton's name be floated for this job, by the way?
I didn't.
Yeah, there was like, I forgot who. There was some report. I was talking with someone about it of Luke Walton being mentioned. It was from Stephen Bondi, who covers the Knicks for the Post. He brought up like Luke Walton, I think, just as like one of like a name kind of to watch. It looks like Mike Brown is in there as well per that.
Yeah.
I think Luke is a great coach. I just think this is a terrible fit for him. And I just, I think like you look at how like he kind of struggled with the market of LA. I don't think the market in New York is any better at all. And so to me, like even with the cons of Tom Thibodeau as a coach, I still think Tom Thibodeau was the best coach for them going forward, just because of the relationship with Brunson and with the way that the identity in which he fit that team. Like if there were truly players who went in and said, I can't play for him, and it was like Mikal Bridges, who you traded like 5 picks for, then like that's a different conversation. And that's probably what happened, if we're being honest. But like if you're looking at like why the New York Knicks didn't win the series against the Pacers and why they're home, although I do think Thibodeau got out coached in that series, I do not think coaching is why the Knicks didn't make it to the finals.
No.
I think it was their lack of depth. And you could say, oh, well, Tibbs should have played his bench. Who?
Right. I mean,
like we need more DeLon Wright minutes in the regular season.
Yeah,
we need more Landry Shamet.
It's a weird situation they're in, because every coach that they're interested in, like I saw a report about Udoka in Houston, like he's not leaving Houston.
Oh, that's like a no chance in hell. If you're Houston, you hang up if they ask for an interview.
Yeah, it's like there are available coaches, but the problem with New York is you can't just hire a coach that has been, had success and then we're bringing in this new coach. You need a flashy name. You need a big name in New York. Like you can't just
when you set the bar at winning a title.
Yeah, like you can't just say, let's bring in Chris Quinn. Right? Like Chris Quinn will probably be a coach in the NBA one day. He's a longtime assistant of Coach Spo in Miami. But like
right. Like you can't say welcome Sean Sweeney and expect people to be excited.
Yeah, like they need a big name. I think that's why they're going after established coaches, so the media's not on their ass. Like, Mike Brown, Mike Malone, Taylor Jenkins, which I don't even know if Taylor Jenkins would want to coach New York after like he had his team that they could have won like 40, 50. I think they're already at 44, but like they could have won 50 games and he got fired from Memphis.
If I'm Taylor Jenkins and I just had the luxury of operating in the shadows for all these years and building this program kind of in his image, the way that he wants, why would I go to New York where I might not even be able to pick my staff? I might be fired again within 2 years. And I don't even necessarily know if I have a roster that can compete for a title. Like the only guy that like truly makes any sense to me is Jason Kidd, just from the sense of like, listen, I don't think he should leave Dallas, because I think having Cooper Flagg gives him longevity there. And I think there's something to be said about him growing with Cooper Flagg. But at the same time, if there is kind of a moment to have an out for, of the Mavericks, and if there is a time where Dallas, like would make a coaching change, this kind of is the perfect time. And like, I think of the big names that like is like that is under contract, he's probably the most gettable from that aspect. And listen, again, I'm not saying this is like, I think he's like the best option, but like at the very least, like you're getting someone who's worked with Brunson before, who's been in New York, understands all of those different things. He's a former player, so he can speak to a lot of the guys in the locker room. Like, to me, like if the Knicks are going to go out and get anyone and like have it like not feel like a step backwards, to me, it's going to be like a Jason Kidd. Because to me, even like Mike Malone, I think he's an awesome coach. I love Mike Malone, but his father was Tom Thibodeau's mentor.
Yeah,
and he just got fired for not playing his guys on his bench and for being stubborn.
Yeah, I thought of a former Knick, and I trolled. I don't know this week if you saw it. I said, "Why don't you give Monty Williams a call?" I mean, hey man, he was drafted by the New York Knicks.
Do you want to talk about what a media hellstorm that would be if Monty Williams was the coach hired? If that was his first job after the debacle in Detroit? Mad Dog would have an aneurysm on air if he had to talk about the Knicks hiring a coach who lost 28 straight games.
I'm just saying, like, if you want to coach with the I don't give a fuck attitude, I'm just here for the money, and like has coached veteran teams, it could probably get the most out of them. Like, he could, but I don't really know what he wants to do. I know his son is getting very close to entering the NBA draft. I think he'll be entering in a year or two. But I mean, that's just the name I floated out there. I honestly, when I posted it, I was just like joking.
Right.
But like the post kind of circulated and they're like, oh yeah, former Knick, let's do it. I was like, oh my God, I didn't even me like kind of looking at Basketball Reference. I was like, oh, he did play for the Knicks. Maybe I'm onto something.
Yeah, I mean, you're definitely right. Monty definitely has that don't give a attitude. But I mean, if you are just talking about like established names, he definitely does fit that bill. Even for like, just for Monty's sake too, like whatever coaching job he takes next, I almost think he'd need to have a place where he has some runway, or he would want to know that he has some runway, because if you listen to how he did not appreciate the way it was handled last summer. Let's say that.
No.
He was not a happy camper, even though he's getting all this money. There's a reason why guys like James Borrega didn't even get to interview with the Pistons last year.
Yeah, maybe they go with Frank Vogel. I don't know. That's another name that I feel like has got so many raw deals in his coaching career, and he's a good coach.
Right.
Like,
but even
Frank Vogel, I'd be happy with if I was a Knicks fan.
Yeah, like he's one of those, like, I'd probably say sure, but it's like, and this is no disrespect to Frank Vogel. It's just, you could put whatever guy in that seat. I just don't think he's moving that needle to that extent. And this is kind of, to me, just like a conversation about coaching as a whole. I think we're just way too quick to blame anything that goes wrong on the coach. It's the easiest reflex. That's why, like, I think I even had to like wait a little bit before I even started talking about Monty and his coaching job last year. Cause to me, it's just like, it's the easy thing to reach to.
Yeah.
Like the majority of the time when a team is struggling to the extent that they are, it's a personnel problem. It's a team composition issue. It's a front office issue.
Yeah.
Whereas like if you want to look at a real reason why the Knicks are home, it's because they went and spent 5 first-round picks on Mikal Bridges, and then also went and got Karl Anthony Towns, and then somehow expected that to all come together on defense with Jalen Brunson on the court at the same time. That's why the Knicks lost.
Yeah, it's like I said, I know it's going to be just a summer full of drama for them. I could see it going completely south, just the way it was handled, because I didn't think it was a coaching issue. I thought maybe they could have brought in an assistant to kind of aid him in rotations or maybe give him different ideas.
Mm-hmm.
But it's kind of, if you're a Piston fan, I know we just talked Tibbs and Knicks for the past like 25, 30 minutes, but like as a Piston fan, I'm happy JB's the coach and we have some stability here.
Yeah, most definitely. But also, if you're a Pistons fan, better not be quick to run JB out the door if there is some issues that do come down the road. Because if there's anything you learned, like in Detroit, but also just like throughout the league, the grass isn't always greener when you go and make a coaching change, man. It's just not. You think you're going and making a definitive upgrade, it can completely mess with the fabric and in the chemistry of your team.
It really can, man. It's just like a lot of my friends are covering the Pelicans. Know some guys that are on the beat down there, and they're just so impressed with Joe Dumars and the professionalism down there. And the thing with the Pelicans is Willie Green is actually a mentor of Monty Williams, but they won't move on from Willie Green. They don't feel like he's that coach that really, go over the hump. And they were talking about how Joe fired so many coaches here in Detroit. And I was like, fellas, we fired so many coaches because we didn't know what the hell we were doing. It's not because Joe just decided to wake up one day like, oh, let's fire this coach. Like,
yeah.
After the Go in the Work crew, man, it's just like coach after coach after coach because we were just trying to find a new voice to, get these guys to play hard. But it's just like it's kind of funny when you think about how, coaches have such a short shelf life in the NBA, and general managers do too. It's a result driven league, Sean, and if you're not, giving results, you don't get too many opportunities again.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at all of the coach, I mean, this stat just keeps going around. All of the coaches of the year since 2017 are no longer on that team. Like
so
almost
didn't win it.
like almost all the finals winning like coaches over the last 5 years. Like, I think the only one that is still on their same team, other than Joe Mazzulla, is Steve Kerr. Otherwise, Mike Malone, he's gone. Mike Budenholzer, he's gone. Frank Vogel, he's gone. Like, there's just too many examples of coaches being scapegoated. And I forget who said it, but when you're a coach, you're hired to be fired. That's the unfortunate reality of this business. And I think if you're a lot of these owners, you look at the talent that you have in house, it's a lot harder to fire a player than it is to fire a coach. And, you believe in what you have, and you believe, oh, if we just have the right voice, like we can get this over the hump. But the reality of it is a coach is very often not a deterrent. They're more often an addition when a team is when a team is put together right. And again, to me, that's just like the biggest pet peeve I have with the discourse around hoops is just how much people just point and blame coaches for anything that goes wrong.
I mean, look at Matt Ishbia, prime example.
What an amazing thing, by the way, that his takeaway from what happened over the last couple of years with the Suns. Did you see his letter that he sent out? Like he said, I wasn't involved enough. It's like, that was your takeaway? Yeah. Your takeaway is you need to do more? Yeah. Like this might get bad in Phoenix to levels that we didn't even think were possible. He might be saying, hold my ranch.
Yeah, and then you looked at like the people that he hired, surprise, surprise, they are literally the Phoenix Spartans.
Yeah.
Like, everyone has a Michigan State tie. And someone's just like, oh, who are the Suns going to trade for? I was like, well, you got two options. Miles Bridges, Jaren Jackson Jr. Like, they're probably going to be Phoenix Suns if I had the wager.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, just off the Spartan connection alone, people have thrown out like the idea of like Kevin Durant for Karl Anthony Towns. And like, if I'm Phoenix, I'm probably taking that deal every day of the week. If I'm the Knicks, I'm probably not. The fact that Devin Booker is still bought into whatever they have going on there, they have to be counting their lucky stars. What's that?
See the contract extension he signed?
Yeah, I like D-Book, man. I don't know if I like D-Book for $75 million in a season.
That's insane. We actually got someone that's from the Phoenix area managed to be effed up by trading DeAndre Ayton. Yeah, and Cameron Johnson and Mikal Bridges and depleting your bench for Kevin Durant and Bradley Beal. Yeah, I do agree.
It's the fact that you thought that you could get comparable play out of Yusuf Nurkic in the year 2024. That is really the biggest damning part of that trade. It's not even necessarily the fact that they traded away Ayton. It's the fact that they got Yusuf Nurkic in return, who they had to attach one of their remaining first round picks just to get out of Phoenix.
Yeah, man. It's I look at Phoenix and I look at Ishbia, and it just reminds me when Tom Gores was not that aggressive because they didn't have the draft capital to do that. But it reminds me when he did purchase the team and he wanted to do things his way, and he had to fail so many times for him to actually say, okay, I'm going to take a step back. I'm going to hire people to run my organization and run my franchise. I don't think Ishbia has got humbled enough yet. He will. It's going to take maybe a few more years where, Devin Booker's making 80, 75 million and they're winning like 30 some odd games.
A lot of these billionaires who get into ownership, you think about it, they've all won in whatever industry they're coming from. Like they're all like they're used to being the best at whatever they do. And so a lot of business people think that they can come into the league and can own a team and just do things their way because their ways worked and everything else. But the reality of it is the NBA, like sports, is the most front-facing, result-driven business there is. It is the most transparent when you are thriving. It is the most transparent when you're barely surviving. And so that's why, like Matt Ishbia coming in, who, United Wholesale Mortgage being this absolute powerhouse of a company that makes all this money and does all this different things, comes in, especially thinks he knows a lot about basketball. It's a whole different thing when you are the person making the decisions and cashing the checks. And the problem for Phoenix before was you had Sarver, and it's like, oh, cool. Like we have this owner who's super cheap and is just a horrible person. And he's definitely not Robert Sarver levels as far as like a person and everything he's doing there. Like absolutely not. But it's not a whole lot better results wise yet, even with how much they're paying.
It's not. So apparently Shams Charania during the finals said that the Pacers are going to re-sign Miles Turner to a new long-term contract and go into the luxury tax for the first time in 20 years. Turner will likely earn $30 million annually on his new contract. We talked about Miles Turner, seems like maybe 20, 30, maybe 40 minutes ago.
Yeah.
That's exactly what we said. Probably $30 million a year, and they'll probably go over the luxury tax, and he was really unlikely. So
I imagine that the Pacers saw that Jake Fisher report today, and I'm sure they wanted to use this as an opportunity to say, hey, no, we're taking care of our guy, which I just think if you're the Pacers, you do not let anyone from that team leave. If you run it back.
You can't win a championship and lose your starting center. And look how many centers they've had to sign because James Wiseman got hurt. And then Thomas Bryant, Tony Bradley. They lost Isaiah Jackson really early in the season. So not surprised about the report. And we talked about it earlier. But Sean, I've had you on for over 2 hours. I know you're probably like me. You're going back and forth, or you got 2 monitors. I don't have 2 monitors. I'm going back and forth watching the finals.
You already know I got the game on 100%. Yeah.
But I appreciate you being on here as always, man. But I want to give you the floor for people that are watching, where they can find you, where they can support you. Watch podcasts that you do. I'm still trying to get through the Jordan Bickerstaff podcast, but like that. But floor is yours.
Yeah, I appreciate it, man. This is obviously a slow but also chaotic time of year. So if you want to check out the content we have going on, you mentioned we had Jordan Bickerstaff on, JB's nephew, a coach in his own right, really great basketball mind, just a cool dude. If you want to go listen to that episode, go over to From Half Court. Also this week, going to be having a couple episodes coming out. One is a big draft preview with Steve Burke, Resball Pod. Always bring him on to talk draft stuff. So had a really good conversation about that. And then you can also follow me on Twitter at Sean Half Court for any updates, live commentary, news, all those different things. If I get to go to any media events this summer, you'll be seeing all that stuff on there. So Anthony, thanks so much again for having me on. I always love coming on here and talking with you. And yeah, man, excited to see probably the next time I come on, things are probably going to look a lot different for the Pistons. So it's going to be a fascinating summer for sure. And I'm always down to come on anytime and chat with you, man. It's always fun.
Yeah, it's always fun just to keep your mind off stuff, just talking, basketball like we usually do. But I have all your social media links down in the description below for people that are watching live on YouTube. You can follow Sean on Twitter. You can subscribe to his YouTube channel. But we will see you guys next week. Have no idea what the hell I'm going to talk about. Probably lean into some more draft as it gets a little bit closer. But until next time, you guys take care. And as always, go Pistons. Peace.